Greetings, lings and queens of the Starcraft universe. I'm Ayesee here with its Gosu.com, and I'm so excited because this week we had a chance to sit down with Spanishiwa, the Zerg player making waves all across the SC2 metagame, be it in North America and internationally. We had a chance to sit down and talk shop with him about Zerg, about his inspiration, and about the future of Starcraft 2 as both a pastime and an esport. First and foremost, we'd like to thank you for taking the time to answer some questions for us. Given the waves that you've been making in the Zerg metagame and in the SC2 community as a whole, there are plenty of people as anxious to pick your brain as we are. So once again, thanks so much for sitting down with us.
Yeah, no problem. It's really an honor to be here.
All right, so let's start at the beginning. Can you give us a brief rundown of your RTS history? Were you a Brood War player? What other games would you say contributed to you being the player you are today?
Non-electronic games. I did play chess beforehand.
Okay.
It was pretty competitive, and I made it to state twice and nationals. So that's a little tiny bit of like strategy history.
People always compare any kind of strategy game to chess. Would you say that StarCraft 2 or just RTS games in general maybe are a little bit more similar to chess than other strategy type games?
Yeah, it definitely helped a little bit. Like it helped more than if I played like an FPS game. But right. I wouldn't say it played like a pivotal role or anything.
Okay, and were there any games that did play a pivotal role?
I did play Warcraft 3 and some Dota, which I think it really helped my micro, so that translated well for StarCraft 2.
Okay, so given that you've got a pedigree and some other RTSs, obviously, RTSs with, at least a somewhat pro scene, what qualities of SC2 as a game do you find to be the strongest and most exciting? Like, what aspects of the game do you find to be lacking or in need of improvement or more fine-tuning?
Well, I like the easy mechanics from Warcraft 3. It's got like that easy, very user-friendly interface.
Okay.
But it also takes the macro mechanics from StarCraft 1, difficult like APM-intensive things like injecting. Well, that wasn't in StarCraft 1, but the small macro things.
Right. So in other words, you like the way that StarCraft 2 marries micro and macro together, because there are some very simple, intuitive things in the game, but at the same time, do you find it challenging or to at least give an adequate skill ceiling whenever you talk about the micro-intensive activities?
Yeah, it's slow enough that you can do what you want to do. Like you can paint a picture and you can do that. You won't need like 300 APM to do it. But it's also high enough that you still need a solid foundation of mechanics to be able to go far.
Right. So would you say that mastering and understanding that aspect of the game is what separates top-tier players like you from those who are trying to get to that level? So would you say that that's kind of where the dividing line is between casual gamers and those who are really going to excel?
Yeah. It's a pretty high skill ceiling, all things considered, but it's not too crazy. It's not like you need 300 APM.
I gotcha. So when you do play, you do so as a team member of Vile Gaming. Can you give us a brief rundown of how you wound up on their roster and how that relationship developed and came to fruition?
I was trying to get picked up by a team, so I was joining tournaments left and right. And one of the tournaments I did join was a Vile Gaming Weekly, and I made it pretty far to the semifinals. And the Vile team was there watching, so they said they liked my playstyle and got me in some practice games, and it went from there.
Oh, fantastic. And there are a lot of really good players, grandmaster level players on the North American ladder right now that are looking for teams. Would you say that's the best way for them to go about trying to find a team or get noticed, is just to join a lot of tournaments and hope that someone happens to be looking at you at the right moment? Yeah,
it's all about contacts. You need to find a way to get in touch with the leaders of the clans or clan members themselves and see if you can get into practice games. But if you can't do that, like I wasn't able to, then your best bet would be just joining tournaments and hoping to do well.
Oh, excellent. So for those who aren't familiar with you, by the way, or are only somewhat familiar with your background, just getting to know you, what would you say are your most notable accomplishments so far with StarCraft 2? What's your StarCraft 2 resume, if you will?
I've placed well in online tournaments. Like I said, the VG Weekly. I've also placed well in the SC Reddit Open tournaments. I went second place in 2 of them and made it to the semifinals of the last one that they held.
Right.
And Mr. Bitter's Fubusama Koth series, King of the Hill series,
right.
I managed to take 2 of those.
Fantastic.
And then, so basically it's just online tournaments. I haven't performed really well at LAN tournaments, partly because I haven't attended any. But once I do.
Well, given this is StarCraft 2, there's no such thing as a LAN tournament so far, right?
Oh, yeah, very true. Very true.
So, Anyway, those that are just joining us, this is Spanishiwa sitting down with me, Ayesee of Gosu.com. So, moving on. With that in mind, which Zerg units do you love to use the most, and which do you struggle with using or prefer not to use as much as others, and why?
I love to use the really niche and fast units, so like Speedlings and like the Spellcasters, Infestors, Banelings, but I don't really like Roaches and Hydras just because they're so slow and they're pretty supply heavy.
Right.
And slow units aren't the best for counterattacking and harassing, which is what I like to do in my playstyle. The only exception to this would be the Mutalisk. It's very fast, very versatile, but I still don't like that just because I think it's overused. So
you like to be different, right? You're one of those guys.
Yeah.
You're a Starcraft hipster.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm going to take it that it's those qualities of Zerg. The fact that Zerg does tend to have the fastest units, the most flexible units, I would even argue. Is that what attracted you to Zerg initially, or was it a decision based on something else?
I felt that if you played Zerg really well, you were on top of your scouting, you're on top of your macro, that you'd be able to take an advantage in the early game and then translate that to a win in the later game. Mm-hmm. And so it's really just using outside mechanics, like you consciously making the decision to scout and to interpret the information correctly, and then that would get you the win instead of like positioning or something more in-game like that.
Okay, I got you. So how would you react to the droves of players who claim that Zerg's imbalanced, on the bad end of the imba stick? Because I think you've shown pretty convincingly that there are certain aspects of Zerg that others have just not seen or discovered or tapped into. And so how would you respond to that? Just out of curiosity, to the people who think that if you play Zerg, you're inherently at a disadvantage.
I think that with the current playstyle that they're doing, like the Roach Hydra, like the state of ZVP where people used to be going Roach, Hydra, Corruptor and trying to take on the Death Ball.
Right.
Yeah, if you're that army composition against that army composition, I think you're definitely at a disadvantage. But if you're at a disadvantage, then just try to switch it up and try to do something else and hopefully something sticks.
Right. So would you say that those who claim that Zerg simply can't compete with the Protoss Death Ball are speaking a little out of turn, or you would say that it has something to do with their play style as a whole?
I think it's definitely not unwinnable, but I think Zerg is it's just a tiny bit underpowered.
Okay. Okay, so I know it's like pulling teeth, man. I had to get the opinion now. Nobody wants to answer that directly, so we'll leave that topic behind for now. But you do seem to have tapped into a number of Zerg strengths from their capabilities, their abilities, the mechanics of the race's individual units. And it seems like most of what you're touching on really has been previously overlooked or just was claimed didn't exist, the flexibility and versatility and the options, especially in the early game. So what insight or way of examining the game and its components led you to see what so many haven't to this point? It seems like you've just seen something that others have not been able to.
Well, when you play Zerg, there are things that frustrate you, and those things usually are like medevac drops or warp prism harass.
Right.
And then you think to yourself, well, why can't I do that to my opponent? So really, you just have to flip it on your opponent and do the exact same kind of harass, and they'll get just as frustrated as you, and then suddenly you're on an even playing field.
Yeah, very nice. So if there's any one word I think that seems to be consistently associated with you in your play, it's efficiency. Has there been some sort of special methodology where you've used to discover what for you is peak efficiency in timings and build orders?
Yeah, I like to use very efficient units. Like my early game with the Queens, most players would go for Speedlings, but the thing with Speedlings is you can get more of them and they're cheaper, but they're also less durable. But with a Queen, like you're not going to lose a Queen. It's got like 175 health.
Right.
So just having the most efficient units so that you have the ability to micro them, and the micro will pay off by having the unit not die.
Right.
Because you can micro a Queen, but you can't really micro a Zergling.
Exactly. So you would say that in general, you kind of tend to rely on your micro abilities to keep you alive while you wait for that point in the game where you can explode outwards?
Yeah. You definitely want to rely as much as you can on micro and macro and your actual skill set, and then see if you can translate that into a win by getting a superior army composition in the late game.
Excellent. So one of the biggest vehicles, I think, for your recent explosion in popularity has been your landmark posting on Team Liquid. where you essentially broke Zerg play down to a science. And, it had been kind of done before, but no one had really done it the way you did in that posting. So in formulating what I'm going to call your science for Zerg, what other builds and approaches did you try before developing kind of where you are now, your current play style and your current game plans and build orders?
Oh, so many. Because before all the new patches and everything, the map pool was a lot different. So a lot of different builds were viable and a lot of different ones weren't viable.
Right.
Like I had some pretty crazy ones on Lost Temple, abusing the high ground cliffs, but then once cliffs are gone, it's not really that strong of a strategy anymore.
Right.
So it was a lot of experimentation mostly.
Okay, is there any stand out to you? Any that were either pretty successful early on and then some that just fell flat on their face, or was it just a whole lot of hit and miss all across the board?
It was a lot of hit and miss in the early going, because whenever you try a new strategy, and especially in my case, because I didn't have any practice partners,
right.
So I just kind of went on ladder and just see how it went.
Right.
But as it progressed, I got more comfortable with the playstyle and using the actual buildings like Nidus Worms and the upgrades like Drop Tech.
Right.
And it was pretty reasonable.
Okay, now let's go to the other side of the coin. I mean, given your success and your popularity, it's obvious that much of your approach to StarCraft is quite strong right now. However, with that said, what are your weaknesses? Like, what worries you the most heading into a match with your current playstyle?
It worries me when my opponent knows who I am, and so they know exactly what I'm going to do.
Right.
And so that surprise factor isn't there anymore. And I'm sort of using it as like a crutch,
right.
to take the advantage. But hopefully I'll be able to overcome that with some newer builds and just keep switching it up on my opponents.
Well, that's actually that's a perfect lead into the next question I had for you. Which, I mean, the downside of popularity and notability is always going to be that your playstyle is much more likely to be analyzed, picked apart, or outright copied by competitors. Yep. So I was going to ask, is that a worry for you? How do you plan on dealing with it? And especially as you move forward in the future, you're probably going to be more successful and more notable. So you kind of answered that already, but I mean, obviously you're conscious of it, right? So
you're right.
So how do you feel about it? Just give me a kind of a thesis here, a statement, just to kind of sum that up.
It's a huge worry for me. So what I'm going to be doing is I'll be practicing with different openings and slightly more standard, but still very strong, adding my own little twists on it. And that way my opponents won't know, am I going to do this style or that style? And I'll just be so unpredictable that hopefully I'll be able to take wins just like that.
Oh, we all look forward to seeing it, I'm sure. I know I am. So it seems to be happening a lot less frequently now, but in the past, before you kind of became more popular and had built the name that you've built now, there was a bit of a history of people mocking and laughing at your play style. How do you feel about that? Like, how do you deal with that when you think you're doing something different and obviously you're doing it in such a way that it's pretty successful? How do you deal with people just pretty much ignoring any success or how viable it is and just laughing at it because it's unorthodox?
Right. Yeah, that was it was kind of unmotivating for me.
Right.
But whenever you're in that experimentation phase, of course you're going to get a ton of like silly losses and just dumb things that happen, and it looks silly at that point.
Right.
But once you really refine it and practice it a lot, then suddenly it turns into this really strong, formidable opening.
Right. So, how would you recommend others kind of go down the same path you have? Not necessarily exactly the same path, but say players who want to be the next Spanishiwa. They want to experiment. They want to introduce new builds and change the metagame. How would you recommend that people deal with the mocking, the laughing, the losing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, if you basically I just completely ignored my ladder ranking. Like,
right.
I accepted the fact that I would lose, I would drop out of top 200 and I'd lose a whole ton of games. But as long as you perform well at tournaments, it doesn't really matter that your ladder ranking's bad. Right.
So just ignore ladder ranking, acquire skill, right?
Yeah, it's tough though, because everybody wants to see that top 200. But second season came around, so it's all good.
Right. That's what next season's for, right, man?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So your newfound fame in the StarCraft 2 community, I mean, obviously is no secret. I'm the one begging you for an interview, so it's no secret to me anyway. So, how are you dealing with all this, with the new popularity? Because, full disclosure, I'm an SC Reddit user, have been for some time. I kind of knew your name before, but I don't play Zerg, so it wasn't like I was one of those followers who can claim to be the hipsters and say they were into you before you were you, But,
yeah.
But like, how are you dealing with all this new popularity? I mean, it seems like you're being talked about almost everywhere in the StarCraft community right now. So what are the joys of it and what are the pains of it?
Oh, it's really cool. I think actually earlier today on the TSL, Day9 had mentioned me.
Oh,
So yeah, it was really awesome.
I don't know if you've done it yet, or you're slated. You've either already been on Day 9 or you're slated to be on Day 9, correct?
Yes, I was on Day9's Friends Day Wednesday.
That's what I was thinking. I wasn't for sure. So how was that? What was it like? I mean, was there kind of a moment of surrealness where you're like, okay, because everybody watches Day 9. I don't care how good you are. I don't care if you're Spanishiwa. I don't care if you're QXE or Idra. You watch Day 9. It's just what you do. So,
Yeah, it was amazing. Because you watch the Day9 dailies and you're familiar with his voice, but it's always like a recording, so there's no interaction.
Right.
And
right.
then on the Skype call, it was like, wow, I'm talking to Day9.
Right. So was that kind of a breakout moment for you to say, okay, I've gone beyond just making a few waves and being noticed. This is something serious for me now. This is a big thing now.
Yeah. There was a lot of criticism on my build saying it's not viable or it's not this or it's not that. But if it's good enough for Day9, like
exactly,
it's good enough for me.
Because Day 9 is our god. But so what does the future hold for you right now? All that being said, obviously, you're not just getting noticed, but little things, like we talked about, being on Day 9, that's got to kind of set a trigger off in your head that not only are you good at what you're doing, but you're abnormally good at it. So, like, what plans do you have moving into the future? Be they regarding your StarCraft 2 career or any personal plans outside of the game?
At the moment, my next goal is to perform really well at one of the MLG tournaments.
Okay.
Namely MLG Anaheim. That way, because a lot of the haters are saying, well, it's good on ladder, but North American ladder is not really the best, and this and that. But if it's good enough for MLG, it's good enough.
Right. So, I mean, well, MLG's had its issues, but there's a lot of money in MLG, one way or the other.
Right.
So,
right.
I mean, if you're good enough to win that money, you're good enough to win the money.
Yeah.
So, speaking of MLG, and again, very nice, very kind of you to segue without even knowing what I'm going to ask. But from a personal standpoint, what is your evaluation of the growth of esports across the globe and here in North America? Do you ever see esports reaching the same level of acceptance and success in North America as it has in Asia?
I think Asia will always be a step ahead or a step higher, but it's definitely going to gravitate more towards that level.
Right.
Just because, with this new generation of people, a lot of people play video games. If it's not StarCraft 2, it's Halo or it's, some kind of FPS game. So it's generally becoming more socially accepted.
Right. So what you're kind of saying is, Asia's always going to be a level ahead, but in 2 years, we might be where Asia is right now.
Yeah, but then they're 2 years ahead.
Right. I think most of us would just be happy with one StarCraft channel. So I think we can deal with that. We can deal with that.
Yeah.
Finally, one last question. A question with an answer to which many of your fans are very, very anxious to hear. When are you going to upgrade to a better computer to stream with?
Oh, I was supposed to do it like 2 weeks ago, and then I said, I'm going to do it tonight. And then people are saying, hey, start streaming. I want to see some games. And so I'll do it. And then it's like, well, I'm too tired to order the parts. I'll just do it tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
So I've been procrastinating it a lot. But I'm on spring break, so hopefully it'll get done this week. Hopefully.
Let's hope. And you heard it here. If it's not done in the next week, you can beat down his door and do whatever you need to do. We want to see you stream in high def, my friend. That's all. So it's been a pleasure, my friend. We wish you the best of luck in all of your endeavors. And we all look forward, myself especially, to seeing your unique style of play on display at all the highest levels of esports here in North America and elsewhere.
Yeah, thanks for having me, by the way.
All right, no problem.
It's really great.
Again, I'm Ayesee, and this is It's Gosu.com with Spanishiwa. It's been a pleasure. We'll catch up with you soon, my friend.
You too.